Welcome to Business Watch. We see the global payments landscape is really shifting rapidly with the rise of banking as a service, open banking, digital central bank currency trials, cryptocurrencies. All of this is really making for very interesting times and exciting times in the payment space. Once considered the boring, sort of dumb pipes of our economic world, this is certainly not the case anymore. Now, the South African Reserve Bank is going to be launching its new Rapid Payments Program, RPP, later this year. And in simple terms, it will really give people the ability to make real-time payments using simple identifiers, think mobile numbers or email addresses, to make transacting almost instantaneous. And it's also expected to significantly speed up payment processing times. And in June of last year, we saw the South African Reserve Bank request the Payments Association of South Africa to facilitate the co-design of a new payments industry body, or PIB, by an inclusive community of payment system stakeholders. Well, to talk about this, I'm joined now by Ghita, Erling, who is CEO of the Payments Association of South Africa, PASA, Jan Pilbauer, who is CEO of Bankserv, and Karen Nadasen, the CEO of PayU South Africa. So welcome all. Karen, from the regulatory and policy perspective, and in South Africa, I think we have this National Vision 2025 document with 9 goals highlighted. And the interesting thing about the 9 goals is about what drives what. And you start to see the biggest driver of everything really that needs to lead is the clear and transparent regulatory framework. And then other goals like promoting innovation and competition, the Reserve Bank wanting to open up flexibility and adaptability, interoperability, and then one starts to see the impact on all of these things on financial inclusion. But that really is a result of these things. So really my first question is, if you think about modernization in general of a payment system, but also a new drive towards a real-time payment system, how does this support these policy goals?
Hi, thanks, Michael. It's great to be here and talking to you again. So if we go back to these goals, underpinning the goals in the paper mentioned by the SARB is an environment that is conducive to progress. So the first goal listed is a collaborative approach amongst industry stakeholders. Now, the national payment system exists to facilitate trade, payments between parties, entities, people. It's a service, and it should be, in my opinion, very inclusive. There are a wide range of parties: banks, acquirers, schemes such as Visa and MasterCard, digital banks, payment processors like PayU, and there are literally in South Africa hundreds of fintechs. However, the Payments Association to date has largely represented its members, which are essentially the large banks. This, of course, is not representative of all the NPS stakeholders. So yes, there are bold changes being made in South Africa to facilitate a more inclusive environment. And alongside this, the Payments Association has been tasked with its own transformation into the PIB to meet SARB's goal of a collaborative approach amongst NPS stakeholders. So the changes in the Payments Association directly align to the first goal. Then just quickly to talk about payments modernization and RPP, I just want to give my opinion here before we move over to the experts. One of the major issues we have in South Africa is that you don't have a real-time bank-to-bank transfer system. The gap is being filled by solutions that are screen scraping solutions, essentially. And these are not backed by banks, and they open the market up to risk and fraud. And most of the time, consumers essentially giving over their details, and they don't even know that the liability is shifting to them. So it's quite a big risk. We also live in a country where 80% of people are actually banked. So to me, this is a no-brainer, and yeah, I welcome the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ghita, we know you're leading this transformation as the CEO of PASA to the PIB, the payment industry body. And in this context, what do you see as the driver, the key driver of this transformation from PASA to PIB? And what is the end game here? What are we seeking to achieve?
So the paper that's been shared and that you referred to earlier gives a very good view of the policy objectives that are out there. But what we are seeing is an opening up of the industry, greater access to the national payment system of a broader range of parties, while still seeking to maintain the safety, security, efficiency of the system. So the very careful balancing act that we all work in an environment where actually we want to create much, much greater financial inclusion and increasingly prefer digital payments over physical cash. So to the point Karen was making about more than 80% of people having bank accounts does not translate into how people are making payments for the most part.
Yeah.
And we know that in many environments, the bank account is simply used for a balance request and then a withdrawal of all the cash. And the ultimate end goal, I think, of what we're achieving to do is to broaden access, broaden competition, but ultimately create reach into markets that haven't been comfortably touched before now. Obviously, the existing is critical. Payments are the lifeblood of the economy. Like any infrastructure, be it railways, electricity lines, whichever one you choose to compare us to, it has to be modernized, it has to be maintained, and it has to function. Otherwise, you don't have a working economy. But we need to go further than that and build in the financial inclusion on top of it. So I would say that that's probably not the only goal, but the very important difference when you have this conversation in South Africa to when you would have it in many other countries.
Yeah, and what they refer to it as mailboxes, those people who've got accounts but they don't really use them, they don't transact with them, and that doesn't really deepen financial inclusion. Where are we, Ghita, along that road towards establishing the PIB?
So the payments industry body, we've taken a very uniquely South African approach to it, and we've invited everybody, again to the point made earlier, who potentially has an interest in this space to participate in the design of the new entity. That means we're working across a community made up of a variety of sectors, all of whom have completely different viewpoints into the system. From those who provide payment systems, to those who play more peripheral roles, and even to those whose businesses actually depend on the use of payment systems substantially. So we've got this massive community across multiple sectors. We've gotten them all together in a series of workshops. We've developed common models, common language, and we are, I hope, at the stage where we have just about signed off a design for a new entity that we will then document in a report and submit to the Reserve Bank for a no objection view from their perspective. Once we've done that, we can then start planning the transition. And obviously in an industry like this one, where there can be no mistakes, because your salary, my salary, your ability to buy groceries, your ability to buy shares, all depends on this industry. Yeah. We have to be very careful and considered in how we approach a transition of this scale.
Yeah, I mean, load shedding is one thing. Try payment shedding, where you wouldn't be able to get any payments done. And Jan, as we know, critical lifeblood of the economy. When it comes to RPP and the Rapid Payments Program, we have recently had one modernization of our system in the debit check upgrade, I suppose, to our payments. But where does RPP and those innovations, where do they fit with regards to these policy goals that we've been speaking about of, broader access, financial inclusion? Where does RPP fit into all of that?
Thank you, Michael. I think it actually underpins them all, and it's almost a necessary first step. So you talked about debit check, which helped with the collections, how people, can get money, or how people can collect money. When it comes to RPP, I also wanted to say that South Africa has something to be really proud of. We have a history of many payments innovations in the past. We have fantastic thought leadership here, and Karen and Ghita are just two examples who are working with us to actually change how people experience payments. When it comes to us, Bankserv Africa, we are the plumbers. We just bring the pipes in the background nobody thinks about, and you just want them to work and be everywhere. And that's what we are trying to do with RPP. I don't want people to kind of worry or think how they want to pay. You should worry how much you have to pay, but the payments should be ubiquitous. So when you send money, even small amounts, when you pay for your day-to-day necessities or when you need to transfer money, make it almost seamless. And of course, you should not pay 10, 15, 20 rand for a payment like that. So we are learning from other countries. It has helped with the economies in other parts of the world, sometimes even similar to South Africa. So when it comes to deep financial inclusion, building your credit score, building your financial history, it really opens door to many other things which many South Africans are currently lacking despite having a bank account.
Now, what is it, because we do currently have, Jan, a real-time clearing system. So what is it that we're trying to improve upon, replace with this modernization?
So that's one of the things South Africa should be very proud of, because this was probably one of the first real-time payment solutions out there in the world. I think it was introduced in 2006, and it's serving its purpose. You can send up to, I think, 5 million rand. So it's a very robust system, very reliable. But also because it has to manage risks up to 5 million rand, it's not your day-to-day system which you can pay your 20 rand lunch or 30 rand lunch. So what we are doing, we are turning it upside down. Like you can send an email today and receive it on the other side in a couple of seconds. This will happen with payments. You will not have to exchange, as you said, bank account information and branch codes. No, you will be able to pay me, or I will be able to pay you based on something I already ideally know about you, being your cell phone number or business name. So what we are trying to do is fix two sides of the equation. Because if we really want digital payments to take off, we need to make it easy for people to be able to receive money from government, from employers, from each other. But then when you go along with your life and you need to, transact, nobody thinks about payments. We want to buy goods. We want to buy services. We need to provide assurance that any PASA shop, any retailer, anywhere you go, there is a high chances that they will accept a digital payment from you. So basically, Rapid Payments Program for very low cost is putting this utility in place where it will connect banks and potentially even all the fintech players and everyone to get the payments experience to channels and places where currently people only rely on cash. So it's quite different.
And I guess, what springs to mind here, Ghita, as well, is that while we want to do this with the end user in mind and make it quick, seamless, easy, it was just a couple of weeks ago, as I recall, that the Prudential Authority came out with anti-money laundering and terrorism financing risk assessments of the big banks. And so you need to be able to balance this with some KYC still. You still need to know, who the beneficial owner of the end account or email address or cell phone number is. That creates quite a challenge, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So when we talk about the safety and soundness of the system, we talk to exactly that. The system must work. The money must get to the right person as was intended without anything happening in between. And we rely very heavily on the rules and regulations around the banking system as to who can hold the account or the store of value to ensure that money is landing up in the right place and that the account opened in your name is genuinely your account. So the entire banking regulation plays out in this space, not just the movement of money from one bank account to another. And that is why I think it will take some time over the next few years as you see this extend to different stores of value, perhaps, than simply bank accounts. It would require changes in regulation, but also changes in how people approach managing those stores of value to ensure that we adhere to the standards that are required to keep us a reputable and good citizen of the financial system.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope we can avoid that grey listing as a side point as well. Beyond, back to the role players here. Who are the major role players? Which banks? And in terms of timelines, I know there's kind of a end of the year goal. Are we on track for that kind of implementation date?
We are more or less on track. So end of year, it's always difficult to do anything because there are holidays and freeze periods. Nobody wants to roll out a massive change. So it may slip into early next year. But all the players are aligned. And that's what makes any utility or industry program so difficult, because you need to achieve something called critical mass. It's not going to be very helpful if we tell people you can use Rapid Payments Program only if you bank with Bank A or if you are using application from this fintech. No, what we are trying to do is to get all the large banks on site, also the fintechs and other players, to enable through the banks some of these channels where we believe people will be using Rapid Payments Program. So I'm happy that everybody signed up. Everybody is working hard. We are now in something called market acceptance testing. So the platform is built and now the channels are being built and everything is being tested from risk management and everything else. And I believe, we as a society, we need everything fast. We want to pay fast. So I believe this cannot come fast enough. But early next year, we hope we will be in the market.
I'm seeing surprisingly few grey hairs around your chin and on your head, Jan, considering what you've got to manage here. It's hugely complex. When we look at who will adopt this and what will drive adoption, and I think you did touch on it, it has to be interoperable across platforms and really easy for the end user. What do you see driving adoption?
So for me, it's making it simple, as I mentioned, making it affordable and making it as close to a cash transaction you can imagine. People has to trust it. People have to believe that if they use or leave the money at a bank account or some other regulatorily recognized store of value, they have to trust it. So that's kind of one thing. Second thing is the ubiquity. You know, as I mentioned before, if you have to think about, oh, can I use RPP here? Can I use RPP there? It's not going to work with this hustling lifestyle we all live. Regardless if you do transaction online, you are buying something, you know, from an e-commerce platform, or you go to your PASA shop, or you want to send money to your gardener or cleaning lady. We want to do everything shop. So we just need to make it simple and kind of become part of our life, like part of what we do every day, and the payment experience has to become almost seamless.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid, as I say, kissing cash goodbye. We could also say, Corin, from a global perspective, what do you see driving adoption?
Thanks, Michael. So I think, you know, the frictionless aspect that Jan points out is incredibly important. If we look at card payments, it's come a long way. You used to put in your card number, your expiry, all these details, and many solutions today, you don't have to put in anything. You don't even have to put in your CVV. You just need to do a second factor authorization on this sometimes, not even always, and it happens seamlessly in the background. And I think that this is something that should be considered, and I'm sure it is, for RPP. We also have some good examples of other implementations in other countries, right? I know the Bankserv team has spent a lot of time in Asia, so we can look to India as a good example. But in India, of course, there were three main aspects of the system. The first was the Aadhaar identity management system, which gave everybody a digital identity, which was a really important aspect of payment inclusion. The second aspect was UPI, the Unified Payment Platform, which essentially drove the bank-to-bank transfers, which is something that we're trying to achieve. And the third aspect, which really drove the inclusion of the SMB sector, was the QR standardization project, which is something that we also have. So for me, I think, you know, the one part, the digital identification aspect is missing there. Hopefully that will also come. And that's a bit of a gap for me. So, but I'm fully on board with the RPP project, and I think that this is something that is definitely going to change the game for us. And, you know, we can't do everything big bang. I think we've got to test the market, test the waters, and we will refine it and we will get there. And it's such, I think for me, it is for me the most exciting and biggest project that is really going to transform payments. I'm really excited about this. If we also look at other implementations in Europe, for instance, open banking implementations in PSD2 in Europe, we can learn from some of their errors and mistakes, because whilst things were standardized, they weren't given specifications. And so you ended up with all these different variations of bank APIs that you needed to implement. I'm talking from a fintech perspective. If you want to drive inclusion there, you need to be very specific in terms of that specification and user flow, which then drives acceptance and makes it more inclusive for the different fintechs to integrate and implement the solution moving forward. So those are the things, some of the lessons that I think we learned in other markets, that we hope the industry will consider here.
Are we taking, Ghita, are we taking some of these lessons on board? And I'm going to pick up on one, for example, digital identity in a country like South Africa, where obviously there is digital inequality as much as there is financial and other inequality. How are we thinking about ensuring that we solve for a digital identity so that doesn't become a barrier to access?
So I think that it's one of several barriers to access. Digital identity, we've already got good access to Department of Home Affairs and are able to, as you've seen in many of the digital startup banks, do a reasonable job of identifying somebody without them physically walking into a branch with a document. So we're not a complete disaster. Let's start off by saying that. But as a country, we can do a lot more around that. To Corin's point, though, you can't do everything at once. So you cannot redo the regulatory regime at the same time as modernizing legacy payment systems, creating new modernized payment systems, and roll out major initiatives like these. So we do try and prioritize everything that we're delivering. What I would say to you that I think gives us some comfort in all of this is that the reason why our current organization in the Payments Association of South Africa and the PIB will both exist, or well, sequentially exist, is to ensure that we prevent exactly the fragmentation that's been mentioned and retain the interoperability within the market, so that it doesn't matter who you bank with or who your employer banks with or which banks you're trying to connect to. Your experience should be common across all of those. And that is really the core purpose that we exist to provide. And that creates a platform for the innovation, the competition, and all the other elements that we've spoken about.
Wow. In terms of expected market response, we've got 5 minutes to go. Jan, what do you expect the market response to be when you finally go live with this system?
Well, we have done a lot of research, and as I mentioned, I think this is a piece which is missing. And I'm not saying that having a fantastic friction-free payment system will recover our economy, but when you look at globally, there are very little advanced and well-functioning economies which don't have a friction-free real-time payment solution. So with the digital identity Ghita mentioned, I think as a country, we have a lot of these building blocks which are out there. What we are trying to do is to bring them all together. And that's really only through the collaboration of multiple players. We are a utility. We are running, as a not-for-profit maximization. So we are bringing the players to work together towards this noble purpose. We want to better people's lives in South Africa. We have done a lot of research how this can fit people's lives, all demographics. How can we make it the system for all, like cash is? And we are quite excited. We will do a proper marketing. It will have a fantastic name people, South Africans, can relate to. So I think there will be a lot of excitement, and it will change how people transact with money.
I see the communications aspect, Ghita, being critically important about how this is communicated to a market at the broadest base has really been reliant on cash for a very long time in order to ensure that there is broad-based acceptance.
Absolutely. So the right payment systems are necessary but not sufficient. The research around the so-called mailbox or postbox accounts talks a lot to financial education. It talks to a lack of trust in the system. So if I leave my grant there for more than 7 days, might it be taken away from me? And it talks to concerns about how do I control my money and use it elsewhere? So without question, what we're doing is a building block. There has to be a lot more done. And we would like to think that between ourselves and Bankserv and all of our members, we sit at the heart of a community who can communicate much around the financial inclusion and the benefits of the use of a system like this in protecting people from the risks of carrying all their cash in one go. So we acknowledge there's a lot more to be done than just creating the system and making sure that it works the way we envisage that it will.
Absolutely. Just to go around the panel one more time, as we've got 3 minutes to go, a minute each, and your concluding thoughts with your expectations and the way forward from here, Karen?
So Michael, I think that we're getting the foundation right in the PIB, changing the industry and creating a collaborative national payment system with all the stakeholders there. So I think that's the start. The future, there's going to be quite a lot of things to come. As you know, CBDCs, we've got a project in South Africa is involved in actively. So there's some exciting things to come. But I just think that utility trumps everything in payments, and the RPP project is going to change the game for us. So a lot of pressure there for Jan.
No pressure, Jan. What do you see as the biggest challenge still that you've got to overcome on this road to this RPP revolutionary payment system?
Well, we have to continue this agile approach we started. We have to keep up with the market. It has happened many times before that the payments industry puts something in place and doesn't touch it for a decade. And of course, it becomes obsolete. So we are putting really a platform for innovation where all players can innovate. And like with telephone was invented, to listen remotely to classical music concerts. Look at your phone you carry today. It's quite far from that. So we are putting, as I mentioned, the pipes. We will bring the water and the utilities everywhere it needs to be. But then people will have to come up with some new ideas how this would be used next year, year after next, and support different use cases. We just need to make sure that the pipes are large and flexible enough to cater for all of that. So that's not an easy task.
Not at all. And Ghita, Karen did mention central bank digital currencies. I know we're part of Project Dunbar, along with 13 other projects that I'm aware of around the world looking at central bank digital currencies. What are your expectations for the future?
So I think we're doing absolutely the right thing around understanding digital bank currencies, but the real and immediate need is for me around financial inclusion in the last mile and getting people to be able to use a digital payment everywhere that they happen to find themselves. And I think that's a much bigger conversation than at what form money happens to take.
Yeah.
It's about how you get money through the pipes to people. And that's the exciting part of this conversation.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, it's been great chatting to you all. That was Ghita Erling, CEO of the Payments Association of South Africa, who was joined by Jan Pilbauer, CEO of Bankserv, who's over in Canada at the moment, and Karen Nadasen, the CEO of PayU South Africa, talking about the rapid payments program and the transition from PASA to the PIB here on Business Watch.